Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Discount Geeks. Our usual host, Michael, couldn't make it in today, so I got this random guy from Facebook to come in. So there's that. But
Hi, I'm a random guy from Facebook. Yeah.
So I used to own a meme page that was about Daisy Ridley picking her nose or something. And I posted a link to like some Star Wars essay I wrote, and this guy was like, "Woo!" Okay, so there's that. That's our origin story. There you go. Okay, so
that is precisely what happened. Yes.
So here I have a Dark Horse comic, Star Wars Tales. Which is it's basically infinity stories within the expanded universe. So yeah, it's just like short stories. There it is. Everybody knows this one. Skippy the Jedi droid.
Skippy the Jedi droid. That I do know about.
Yeah, everybody knows.
Is this the book that has like the old infinities, like the infinities of like what if Luke didn't blow up the Death Star and like that whole thing, or
no.
Tag and Bake, or no?
No, we will get to that though. I'll get to that. But
I do remember
stories.
Skippy.
Like it isn't
Skippy
like
the
what
Jedi
if stories. It's just like stories that are probably ambiguously canon.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you were talking about, where Luke wasn't able to blow up the Death Star.
That one, yeah. The New Up Infinities, yeah.
The art in this one is good.
Mm-hmm.
The one in the Return of the Jedi was terrible. The art
out of the original trilogy Infinity Stories, I think I liked this one the best.
Yeah.
I read the synopsis and then this one seemed the most interesting. The Empire Strikes Back one was okay, and I don't really remember much about the Return of the Jedi one. Han
Solo with a double blade lightsaber. I always pointed to that.
When did this one come out?
I know it's right after Attack of the Clones because the next season.
Okay, yeah.
And some of the before Revenge of the Sith, definitely, because like in one of the Infinity comics they had Anakin Skywalker, but they never showed his Revenge of the Sith appearance. It was either young or Attack of the Clones Anakin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I have these ones put in the canon order. So these are the ones I just have on hand right now. I have like a bunch more upstairs, but Obi-Wan and Anakin takes place between episode 1 and episode 2. We need more stories between episode 1 and 2.
I agree. I think that would be a great opportunity for future content. Like if they do another Tales of the Jedi season, that would be a good story to explore.
There was a Star Wars Tale story where Luke fights a hologram of Darth Maul, and here Anakin fights a hologram of Maul too. So
there was a book I read as a kid where Anakin is building his lightsaber, and he has a vision in the cave on Ilum, and he fights Darth Maul.
So yeah, the art in this comic is so good. The art is by an artist named Mark Cicchetto.
When I was in college, I had a friend who had a few Star Wars comics, and he let me borrow one. It was the Darth Krayt origin story where he's a Tusken Jedi.
Wow. So here we have this weird because here's the things I don't like about Star Wars, like Marvel Star Wars. There are creatures that don't look like they belong to Star Wars, like this thing. I don't think this belongs in Star Wars. It looks like something from an Aquaman comic. Honestly, I don't know.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, but I don't know if it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like, is that Star Wars to you? That's Metal Gear.
That looks like I've been watching the Matrix movies recently. It's like rewatching them, like the first 3, and that looks like the mech suits that they use to fight the machines.
It's Metal Gear. That's what it is. Yeah, that's the thing I don't like about some of these comics. It just doesn't look like it's in the same universe. I get, it's big and expensive, but there was still like, a baseline style. So yeah, these comics can be weird sometimes. The
Yeah.
Darth Vader comics had a character named Silo 4 or something. He looks like straight out Star Trek.
Yeah.
Here's Solo, a Star Wars story adaptation.
Oh.
I don't like adaptation books generally, but the Star Wars ones are pretty okay. Like, the art in this is fine. There's some rushed panels in here, but there was a panel with Beckett having like derpy face.
Oh wow.
It still looks like Woody Harrelson though. So I'll give it credit for that. But
Yeah.
this is
Especially the cover art really looks. I think that's like that.
This is by
really good drawing
Phil
there.
Noto. It's like he always does this pseudo. I don't know the old painter who did the old movie posters, but he's kind of that, like just a pseudo version of that. That's what I like about his art.
Yeah, has a similar vibe there. Yeah.
This is a good story to read, like prior to War of the Bounty Hunters, which is like Crimson Dawn heavy and Kira heavy. So if you don't want to watch the movie, like that one comic YouTuber I showed you, read this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Han has like a squinty face in so many panels. Like Han has a squinty face right there and there, and even Lando right here. Like it's like the artist was, on a time. He was on a deadline, and he just doesn't want to draw the eyes. So it's always interesting to see how like artists take shortcuts to meet deadlines for these comics. Like, what is this? It looks like he just straight up wasn't colored in. Like, there's a little bit of filling for the eyes right there.
Did you ever watch the old like 2002 Clone Wars? Like
Of course, yeah.
the Tartakovsky Clone Wars.
Yeah.
That's what when things are far away, they get less detailed.
Yeah.
In like that art
that what
style.
it's
That's
like?
what this kind of reminds me of. How like when they're not super close up, the faces are less detailed. It's a unique style. I will say I don't hate it. I think it's an interesting look.
There you go. There he is.
Oh, there he is.
There's the man.
That looks great. That's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the money shot of it all. Well, I don't think there's anything else to show. Yeah, that's the money shot of this comic. Here we got Rogue One. And the same artist for the solo book for the covers. So Phil Noto.
It's good. It's really good cover art.
Like, yeah. The art in the interior art it's good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Like that looks like that does look like what's her name? Felicia Hardy from Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. That's Felicity Jones.
Jones.
Felicia Hardy's the
There you go.
Felicia Hardy's the character from Spider-Man. Yeah.
We got Saw Gerrera from Fallen Order, and then he just looks different in Andor.
Yeah. I was kind of sad about Saw in Rogue One.
Yeah.
I feel like the trailer hyped him up a lot, and then like that was I think the only like letdown for me of Rogue One was that they kind of hyped up. Oh, we're bringing this animated character into live action. They didn't really do too much with him.
Yeah. Well, they did it with Andor, so that's why like Bail Organa.
Yeah.
Remember how Bail has like gray hair in Obi-Wan? He looks older in Obi-Wan than he did in Rogue One. Like they didn't really do his hair. They didn't have a budget for Obi-Wan, but he did look a lot younger in Rogue One, which is weird. Like the deep fake Luke they did, he looks younger than the actual Return of the Jedi Luke, and so weird. And then he goes, let's see this closed eyes thing again. He's not even the same artist.
I wonder if it's a style of drawing that people do for.
No, I never seen that before. I mean, it's not common here. You don't really see it much. I need to show Darth Vader.
It's got to be in there.
It's not like a big splash page. It's just like a few panels.
Oh, that's good though. That's
still
good.
But I wish it was like the whole page, just like Maul. This looks like they just took random movie stills and redrew it. They didn't trace it, which I'm grateful for, but they just redrew it from them. No, I think it was. Yeah, it looked like they did trace it, but they actually stylized it a bit, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, I mean that first shot with Vader looks very similar to when he activates his saber.
Lando. I don't remember this comic. I read it, but I think it was just a random side adventure with him and Lobot. Charles Soule wrote this, by the way. And the hell?
Yeah, he wrote a bunch of the Vader comics and the Knights of Ren comic, right?
I'm not going to show much of it, but here you go, Black Panther. That's weird. Thank you, Marvel, Star Wars. That's all I'm showing. We got Disneyland.
God, I never read that.
It's basically Han Solo and Chewbacca goes to Disneyland and Dr. Aphra too, I guess. I don't know. I haven't read it. I don't really want to. Who wrote this?
I would say it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that I haven't been to Galaxy's Edge yet, but I think it's pretty cool that they made the setting of it like its own unique planet and gave it a story that's relevant to both the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. I thought that was pretty cool.
This is cool.
When I heard about
First
that.
Order Stormtroopers and Ki-Adi-Mundi's lightsaber in Disneyland. Disney World, whatever. That's interesting. I should read this. Am I going to read it? Probably not. Oh, wait. What am I saying? I bought it. I have to read it. Oh, I don't. 95% of my books I actually read. So.
You should read them. I just started Shadow of the Sith a couple weeks ago.
Shadow of the Sith? Oh, I would rather listen to audiobook.
Yeah, the chapter I got to, it's Ochi getting his mission sign. Oh, there we go.
I love Force Awakens just for like the merchandising.
That was one of the best times in Star Wars merchandise, I think. So it's probably like, I
never lived through like Revenge of the Sith. Like I was alive, but I wasn't into Star Wars at that time, so I wouldn't know. I guess for me, like the closest thing to that. So, but Force Awakens is really just like my investment there.
I feel like Star Wars had a few just like really good primes in the last few years, like I guess for the last 20 years of for merchandise, and I'd say Revenge of the Sith, the Clone Wars, like both the film and then the first season premiere, and then Force Awakens. I feel like those were the best 3 eras of just like a ton of new merch dropping and really the just highest hype for not just the concept but the merch as well.
I love the art in this. The art is by someone named Luke Ross. Oh, I like this. This is an interesting interpretation of Rey's little vision in comic book form. You see
that's cool.
Just falling through different panels.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's right. I remember this one panel of Finn's face that his eyes are dilated. He looks like he was on something. Solo, we'll use the Force. That's not how the
Force works. Yeah. The theater erupted in laughter at that point. That was great. I think while Rise of Skywalker is my favorite of the sequel trilogy, I think Force Awakens is just a tremendous film.
I'll say Rise is my favorite sequel. Force Awakens second. Last Jedi third.
I agree. I
like the content of Last Jedi better than Force Awakens. Hold on. Dude, she didn't look like that. She didn't look like that in the film when she first ignited the lightsaber. They took some liberties. No.
Yeah, they made it look like she's not as confident. I feel like when she got the saber, she was kind of like, she looks a bit scared there. Force Awakens, though, I feel like that's like of the new. I mean, granted, it was the first of the new films to come out, but it was the first one that really felt like I could rewatch that, and it's like, man, this is a classic.
Yeah,
like
that's the point. They try to make it, Yeah, and this
is a hot take, but I think I like Force Awakens better than A New Hope. I think it's could just be because I like
There is a
I like Ray. I like Ray in that movie better than I like Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. So I think that could be why. I feel like
I wouldn't say like I like one over the other, but Force Awakens is one I do revisit a lot. As I was saying, like, okay, hold on. Star Wars Allegiance, Rise of Skywalker tie-in. But as I was saying about like Last Jedi, I like the content of that film, but the execution is just like basically just spoon feeding you the message. It's like
there are things about the movie. There are things about the movie that I don't want to say that I dislike. That is like that because there are things to like and dislike in all the Star Wars movies, in my opinion. And the things that I like about The Last Jedi, I really like, and it makes me overlook some things I may not enjoy as much. Like same with Attack of the Clones. There's some things I don't really like in Attack of the Clones, but I can get over it. Oh, that's a good shot.
Attack of the Clones. That movie's flawless to me. I don't care. I don't. Attack of the Clones.
There is one thing though one thing about Attack of the Clones that looked me as a kid. Oh wow!
Well, I like see. You would never see that from a film.
Yeah. There's one thing about Attack of the Clones. You know how people talk about The Last Jedi and they talk about the disappearing knife?
Yeah.
So, you know what no one else talks about?
What?
How Django is randomly only having one blaster at one point in Attack of the Clones.
Here's basically Finn versus Zeb in a way.
Finn versus is that Zeb or is that just another character?
Just a guy. It's the same species, but it's cool to see like those characters interact.
Yeah, I like to do it. It's like when they did going back. I know we were talking about Fallen Order before this and Jedi Survivor. How Jaro Tapal is that was really cool.
Zeb's CGI in Mandalorian is he looks like I like the textures and stuff, but his animation was a little slapstick. I don't know. Here's Rey versus an Aqua Droid from the Clone Wars.
Oh, that's cool.
I have 2 of these as action figures, by the way.
I like when they bring things from the older times into the later times. I think there was a Luke Skywalker comic, like an old Legends comic, where he fights a droideka. I forget why. And there was and then of course bringing the Naboo starfighter into the Mandalorian.
Oh yeah,
that stuff's always fun. Yeah,
Rise of Skywalker had a lack of prequel ships that were visible.
That's something I think there are a couple of prequel era ships that could have fit perfectly into there. Just one of the few things I changed about Rise of Skywalker.
You can never see this in a sequel film, like Finn like ejecting out like a exploding plane.
Yeah,
like you can never see that. That's what I like about these comics. What the hell is that?
I feel like with a comic you could really do whatever you want because you're only just limited by what you can draw at that point.
Yeah. I mean that's how Legends comics were too.
Yeah. Sometimes I will say that's one thing that like why I feel like I couldn't get into the comics. I feel like sometimes they go a little too far. Like the Vader comics,
just like no.
The pieces I read of the Vader comics were cool, but the one where it's like where he goes to Exegol, great concept. I think it was really cool how he did that. Yeah. But like I thought the whole like summoning monsters thing was a little much for my taste. Like it's fun, it's cool, but I think like you said, it's a little much. It felt a little almost like taking things you wouldn't associate to fit in Star Wars, put them in there. But you know what? But it's fun to see the creativity, and so I can't disrespect someone for wanting to put something in different because look, I feel like that's what makes things exciting is when you put something in a little. I mean, give something more vision. Yeah.
Here's the thing: like, there's a lot of different interpretations with Star Wars when it comes to the form of media. Like Rebels and Andor taking place at the same time, but Rebels just like childish. Andor is World War II drama.
Yeah, because it's like I saw something. It's crazy to think that like Cassian Andor is having a really deep conversation about like the nature of rebellion, also, while Zeb and Ezra are just buying fruit.
The fact, here's the thing about Rebels. Like, there's so many like Deus Ex Machinas. They have plot armor.
That's why it's so interesting that like Andor went really the complete opposite direction and was very mature, very dark. Like even the first episode, it's like they go to a brothel and they say what
Was
it
it a
is,
brothel?
and it's like
I thought it was just a random bar.
no, because that's like where his like you thought like his sister was working there, and it's like
Wait
mentioned
a
that's what. Like, and I'm thinking,
Oh.
wow, that's like something we didn't think we'd hear in Star
I
Wars,
didn't.
because it's like, and you're like, well, okay, it's going to be like
Oh,
really dark.
that's
I wonder if there's anyone. I do wonder if there's anyone whose first exposure to Star Wars is Andor. I
It
wonder
should
if
be.
anyone's doing
it
that.
should be honestly. But then then they see
What's
everything
interesting about
else being sanitized and stuff, and they're just like, "What is this?" But I think Andor,
feel-
like, for me, I am like kind of losing touch with the kiddier Star Wars stuff.
Mhm.
And Andor is something that's actually more like something I like personally in any kind of media, just the tone and stuff. So Andor
Mhm.
really is, yeah. But still, Rise of Skywalker is my number one, just for
Mhm.
the themes and symbolism. But if that was executed like Andor, then shit,
Mhm.
that's a discount geek Star Wars movie. So
I think that if you took Rise of Skywalker and you took Revenge of the Sith and you kind of went back to the drawing room with the movies as they are now, go back to the drawing room,
Mhm.
take the deleted scenes that were removed, add them back in. At this point, I don't know if you could do reshoots for things like that, but
No.
add in the deleted scenes, finish them, do something. Then re-release those movies as extended versions. I think
Mhm.
that would be tremendous. I would love to see that, especially Revenge of the Sith, because there's so many things that they took out of that movie that would just be.
I don't think I've seen any Revenge of the Sith deleted scenes. So I want to know what's truly missing.
There are a couple. I mean, there's one where it's like like the big one that people talk about is Padme talking about the birth of the rebellion
Oh yeah.
and how that came through. But there's also like there's a lot of stuff from General Grievous's ship that they didn't include. One thing being something they actually put this into a level in the Revenge of the Sith game. It was what was weird is that like it's Obi-Wan and Anakin. They find Shakti and General Grievous is there, and he like has her captive, which kind of conflicts with the end of the Clone Wars animated, like
it
the
wasn't
2002
canon
show.
anyway, the deleted scene.
Yeah, it wasn't canon, but it's like Shakti's there and Grievous kills her, and then Obi-Wan and Anakin they cut through the floor. They go into they trigger some meltdown, and there's going to be an explosion. They get out in time, and then they seal the door. There's a great Obi-Wan and Anakin moment where Obi-Wan says it's like because Anakin's trying to seal the blast door with his lightsaber, and Obi-Wan's like, Anakin, it's never gonna work. Like you have so much to learn. Then the explosion happens, the door holds it, and Obi-Wan says, "Okay, I have much to learn."
Yes.
And I'm like, that's like classic Obi-Wan versus like Obi-Wan Anakin dynamic.
I've seen the deleted scenes. I remember now. I don't know why my memory is blanking, but honestly, the fact that I forgot them, really, I don't think they probably. Some of them, they probably shouldn't put some of. I don't know.
There's some stuff that like they just straight up didn't include, like Obi-Wan versus several Magna Guards. Like I've seen the behind the scenes of Ewan McGregor fighting them.
They just streamline it.
Yeah.
Is there really any deleted scene I would miss? I know there's something that was similar to like the Magna Guard scene. I wish was in one of the films. I don't know what exactly. Yeah, I don't know, but we never saw any. We never saw any Rise of Skywalker deleted scenes. That's kind of
I think that's really upsetting because we know that there's things that they took out of the movie. I don't know why they haven't released them. Like, what are they waiting for?
I don't know. It's probably
just like they've released them for the others. The thing that speaking of deleted scenes though, and it have not been able to find the answer to this. Maybe from the pod race in Phantom Menace. There is something that because I have VHS tapes of the original trilogy and the Phantom Menace, and when I was a kid, when I watched Phantom Menace, there was I remember watching the pod race, and then I remember going on Star Wars websites. They started posting all like clips from Star Wars, and there was the scene where the cable disconnects from his pod, and he's like spinning out. He has to use the magnets to pick it up. I don't remember that magnet scene from the VHS, and so I saw that. I'm like, I've never seen this before. This is crazy. And then when they re-released Phantom Menace, I think it was 2011 or 2012 when they did when they re-released it in 3D. And I watched it in theaters, and I saw that scene as part of the full movie for the first time. I thought that was cool. I have to see, like, I don't have a VHS player anymore, but I got to see if that was originally included.
I think you told me about
I was like, I've been trying to look it up, and like if that scene was like added back in or something, but it makes sense.
So I might have to check it. I did look online. I think I found something that basically invalidates your claim, but I have to.
So I wasn't sure. Yeah, maybe I just did not remember that scene. I remember, of course, his other things. A pod. That's like the engine stuff, but like the fixing the cable to have it in there. For some reason, I don't remember seeing that though as a kid. Also, they got rid of the only other Phantom Menace scene I know that was deleted. I mean, I know there's like the Anakin fights his friend who says he cheated or whatever. Oh, yeah. And the probe droid thing, but there's also when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon get out of the sub, and it's like their grappling hook that they're trying to get to the to land, like they're trying to go through it while like the water is pushing the ship, and I think it like falls off the waterfall or something like that on the upper level. Yeah, just some excitement things. I like deleted scenes if they're like put back in. Granted, we know that their canon status can be questionable because they're not in the actual final movie, but I think they're fun.
All of the Last Jedi deleted scenes, they were good. Well,
I haven't seen.
I think other than like Rose biting Hux's finger, I don't know what the hell that was, but I think most of them were really good though.
The only one I've seen of that was of the Last Jedi deleted scenes was the alternate version of Captain Phasma's death.
Yeah, that one's better than what we got.
Yeah, like what we got makes sense, but I think like it's kind of cool seeing just like Finn doing what he does in that one. But I think like there's some character to the deleted version where he says like you were a coward, and then she betrays her own troops. Yeah.
The thing about these films, like they had to cut out so much fat, and I don't know with modern blockbusters, they really have to like just streamline it for the audience. And like test screenings, I don't like those. I don't think Star Wars never had like a test screening for like at least the modern films. Modern blockbusters, they're becoming more like public schools, just like atheistic. They're more accessible, just culturally. Like with Star Wars, of course, they still maintain like the whole like all the like spiritual, religious aspects that makes it actually interesting. But they really like cut down on story, on lore, just to make it digestible. And I don't know, it doesn't really incentivize rewatches. I don't really understand like the modern culture of making films so simple, and it might be it is a trend of sorts, but it's also a hint of creative bankruptcy. But they do have like all those complex storytelling, like that Phasma deleted scene, and it's just weird that they just cut it out like that. But yeah, like of course corporations are the one like dictating these kind of things. Right. I don't understand the mindset. That's just my interpretation of it. Like the Marvel movies, they're just very streamlined. But yeah. And I know you and I have talked about this before, like the how my theory about like how the reason I have always enjoyed Star Wars content, even like from being a kid, but also now being an adult, seeing how Star Wars I felt always had a great combination of there's the surface level to enjoy, and it's like you can be a kid, watch any of the movies, and it makes sense. But then there's also, Star Wars has always had a great balance of depth.
and there's something deeper there. So you can and I feel like Star Trek does the same thing also. You can watch something as a kid and then watch it as an adult and have a completely different understanding, a completely different appreciation for
a lot of
for something.
blockbusters aren't like that anymore.
Yeah, and like I find that with a lot of Marvel movies, even so, like I haven't seen a lot of the newer ones, but I'm thinking just like I guess the biggest example would be like I guess Thor: Love and Thunder, for example.
Definitely.
Like I feel like while I don't think Thor: Love and Thunder was as bad, I think there are a couple things you could have cut out. I think
it was like surface
for
level
me
fun,
that
though. I do enjoy it.
It was very surface level. There are a few things I would have cut out or changed in terms of the pacing. I would have got the only thing I would have straight up gotten rid of was the screaming goats. But
I liked
in that film. It's like I feel like the Marvel, specifically Phase 1, had so many just like. Granted, really, it was the Iron Man stuff in like the original, the first Thor. All the Captain Americas, I think they had just a lot of understandings of just like there's a lot of depth in there that it wasn't too much. There was still surface. I feel like the new Marvel films are very surface, and that's why I've kind of fallen off of Marvel a bit and haven't been as excited to watch the content as much. But Star Wars, I've never felt that air. If anything, I felt the opposite. As we were talking about Andor before, I feel like Andor really goes after the depth, and that's
why I
like
Andor. Like I like how Andor was executed better than Last Jedi. Jedi just
Andor.
Like, I don't know. It's just like story, random story, message, random story, random story, random message, random story. But Andor is just like all the depth right there.
Andor was my only issue with Andor is I feel like it at times was a little too much. A little too much depth, and I almost felt like it was losing the surface level element of it. That's the only thing I really was like felt a bit of a disconnect compared to other content. I don't think Andor was bad. I think it was very well made, but I think just in terms of the type of story,
too much for your brain.
It's like, but not just that. I feel like, and this goes with the fact that it was a 12 episode show compared to the others that are usually doing between 6 and 8. There's more time to add in some extra fluff that they wouldn't put into, say, The Mandalorian or Kenobi, I guess, as a show. It's only 6 episodes long. They wouldn't do that. Like with Andor, they can add in so much more. And so I feel like with Andor, they put in a lot of extra stuff that, not to say they didn't need to include it, but like sometimes I feel like some of the conversations that were there kind of dragged out a bit. And there were things that, every 3 episodes there would be something really grand, like the story arc would kind of culminate. Each episode there was essentially 4 trilogies, and I felt like when you get to the end of each, it makes more sense. The things kind of fall into place in there, but I felt like the surface was a bit harder to grasp compared to other content. I didn't entirely see at first what are they doing. Granted, I think that was intentional, especially the whole like prison sequence. Like, what are they doing? What are they building? And then
it builds intrigue. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It is how I would like write, like a series. It's just very interesting. It's very different. It's complex. The prison stuff was phenomenal. I think that was the best part of Andor, not just because of Andy Serkis. I feel like the suspense, like that was, I think, of that show, of the 4 story arcs, that's the one I felt drawn to the most. Like I felt just, it's like there was an element of mystery and suspense, and I wanted to know what was going to happen next. Versus the others, where I was kind of just like feeling like I was a bit along for the ride. Be like, okay, this is cool, they're going this direction. But the prison, it's like I was really intrigued with that. I didn't catch on my first time watching it that Melshi was like the same character from Rogue One. I didn't realize that was him. Granted, I did not rewatch Rogue One before watching. I haven't seen Rogue One in a while. I think Rogue One is probably. Talking about. But
there's his friend in his friend, like when he has a friend in the prison, then they escape together at the end in the quad jumper they try to steal.
He's the guy at the beginning of Rogue One, right? Like he kills.
Not the beginning. Not the beginning, but he's one of the rebel commandos in Rogue One. And he I think Rogue One's the Star Wars movie that I've seen the least. I think I've only seen it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I haven't seen it that much. I watched Solo is my second favorite Disney film, so I watched that a lot.
Force Awakens I've seen more times than I can count at this point. Like same with all the others, but I feel like
Force Awakens
Last Jedi and Rise
noise for me.
Last Jedi and Rise I've only seen a handful of times just because I feel like my the amount of time I have to watch movies has been so low. Like that's why I've been so behind on Marvel, so behind on DC and a lot of other movies because I just don't have the time to. I don't have the time to watch things as much, and I will at some point. I'm feeling a bit more intrigued by just the upcoming Marvel movies, like the new Captain America seems pretty interesting. I like the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. That goes from there, but Star Wars, I think that there are things that even if something isn't like necessarily my cup of tea, I'd rather just appreciate the thing, find something to enjoy, and be like, oh, here's what this was. But there are things I'll like better than others.
Well, speaking of Marvel, though, I think the way they handle the multiverse, like as limited as it is a lot more poignant when it comes to character psychology compared to other multiverse films. Let's say, okay, so for example, the Spider-Verse films, for one thing, I don't like them because they're meta in a Lord and Miller way. And, well, there's just too much. Like, the second Spider-Verse film, Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I saw the first one.
It's just, the second one yet, okay, so there's like basically a whole entire colony of Spider-Man in a multiverse hub, like VR chat. And I don't like that. It's just an army of them. It is so much. It's so excessive. That's one part of it I don't like. The other part is just, it gets meta-textual in a really, really direct way. They have this thing called canon events. And the name itself makes me groan. Like, they literally referencing, what is canon and stuff. I'm like, stop it. With the MCU, like, so in No Way Home, there's 3 Spider-Men, and they're all Peter Parker.
Yeah,
there's 2 Peter Parkers that are like branch, like are psychological branches from one entity, basically. So there's 3 of them that represent one Peter Parker, and 2 of them are kind of branches of like the main Tom Holland character in that film. It like, that's interesting. That's like very, focused on how the multiverse should be told story wise to convey character. Having different versions of the same character with different experiences, or like just like deep parts of their mind just manifested physically to basically like balance out their emotions. It's same thing with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. There are 2 different versions of Doctor Strange in that film that represent 2 extremes of his. I wrote an essay on this once, but I don't really remember it. But one Strange represents like extreme nihilism, and the other represents extreme, I'm not so sure, but they're just different versions of the same, protagonist that guides him into, making like the right choices. And like in Spider-Verse, it's just like Miles Morales, white guy, Asian anime girl. I'm like, how are they relevant? Like, I get they have like similar experiences, but they're just fundamentally like random people who could exist in the same universe as Miles Morales if they wanted to. They're not different versions of him.
Yeah, I liked at least I agree to an extent. I think that because granted I've also only seen the first Spider-Verse film. I like the dynamic between Miles and the main Peter in the movie, like not his Peter but the one from the other dimension. I think that was done well, but like you said, the other versions of Spider-Man, like Noir, Spider-Ham, I feel like
they're there for the gimmick.
Definitely there for the gimmick. What's the connection to them? Like why should should Miles like we care about them, but why should Miles care about them? I feel like there's the dynamic
is that like they all have suffered tragedy, and then Across the Spider-Verse expanded on that with canon events, and I'm just like, that's too much. Just stop it. But I didn't like
Yeah.
Peter Parker's portrayal in Into the Spider-Verse, like being, all deadbeat, I guess.
It was weird, but you know what? It was unique.
It was unique, but I didn't feel it was ideal.
Like I'll pray. And that's fair. That's
Also
fair.
comedy, but
Yeah,
subversive.
I appreciate.
Like, it's so subversive. Everything's so subversive, and I don't like that. Like,
Yeah.
you can subvert certain things. Like, I get, Luke Skywalker gets those complaints and stuff, but like, that feels more natural than, I don't know, just Peter Parker becoming fat, basically. It's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that like it's interesting because like I am familiar with like the Spider-Verse story like from the comics and how it works, just like, and I think Into the Spider-Verse was less about doing that, but more of just like making a Miles focused movie and kind of the new Ultimate Spider-Man elements and making that work. So I think it's cool that they were able to do things like that, but it's very limited. I gotta just watch them. I haven't seen. I remember I saw the first one in theaters, and I liked it. I never saw the second one though. I gotta rewatch the first one and then watch second.
I wish that Into the Spider-Verse was just a Miles Morales movie with a Peter Parker mentoring him, just like the comics, just like a normal animated Miles Morales movie. It was one of the films that sets the trend for like multiverse, whatever. And the MCU, honestly, they're handling it the best, personally. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I hate that film.
I remember that came out. You said that was one of your least favorite movies. I haven't seen it.
I watched half of it at the time. I rewatched it. It isn't like offensive, but at the same time, of course, it's like random is good. I'm like, but it was mostly like Asian family drama. I don't know. I think Shang-Chi did it better.
I like Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi, because, it wasn't about the multiverse. It was just normal stuff.
And Shang-Chi was also cool because, like, while I think Shang-Chi was very, I could think it kind of like fell into the Marvel's trend of being very surface without a lot of depth. I feel like Shang-Chi was still a lot of fun, very likable, character. The story was
Chinese culture influences. Like the actual like religious aspects from Chinese like culture. So that's what elevated for me a bit. Like there was a video on it. I have to rewatch it, but it was about like Taoism and stuff. That's what I liked.
I liked Shang-Chi, and I'm hoping that we can get more of him in the future films. I thought that was a very nice film. I thought it was a lot of fun.
My only problem with Shang-Chi is just the color, like the lighting was flat. That's really it. The cinematography just looked bad. But the film, I really liked it. It's one of my favorite Phase 4 films.
What's the worst movie you've ever seen? I'm just curious what you would say that would be and why. I know it's very subjective.
I would still say Everything Everywhere All at Once. Just all the random is good aspects of it. It's just random stuff, and they call it creativity. Like, yeah, it's creative, but it's like it's just to shove everything in one film, and I don't really like that. I mean, look, I'm the guy who would like shove so many themes in one, story. But of course, I do it naturally. But with Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's like chaos. It's like going to a rave, I guess. And it's just, now I get why people like it. I get like
the
why
worst. The worst.
It's the most Asian American film there is. I'm not that in touch with Asian American culture. I'm pretty whitewashed, honestly.
The worst movie I've ever seen, not completely separate from everything that we've been talking about. Have you ever heard of a movie called After?
Nope.
You're not missing much. That is, I don't like saying that. Like I think something like because it's like I've talked about how like there's a lot of good things to appreciate in various movies. I found it very hard to appreciate in that movie. I watched it because my girlfriend was like, "You need to see the movie because it's very." She was like, "It's very questionable." She didn't like it. She wanted me. What my opinion was.
But it wasn't
pretty
offensive,
much,
right?
No, I mean, well, I will leave you to determine that when I tell you what it's about.
Okay.
And what it inspires. So essentially, the story for that movie, it's a girl goes to college and she's got good grades. She has a good relationship, but then like she kind of just throws everything out for the bad boy, who's like a British guy in a leather jacket, and she changes everything about herself and just becomes very unlikable over the course of the movie. And what's your question about, is this offensive? I've talked about this with some friends and they say, yes, this is offensive because the movie actually was based on a fan fiction it was based on a fan fiction that the author who wrote the fan fiction based it on Harry Styles. What? And like the idea of like going to college with like and meeting Harry Styles, which I find it a little strange because I feel like Harry Styles is depicted as like the opposite of a bad boy, and the type of boy he's just like really just like I feel like people say he's like, oh, he's like the wholesome guy. He wouldn't be like the bad boy in a leather jacket. And this movie was essentially, I mean, they changed his name so it's not Harry, it's like something else, but I remember seeing that movie and just being like, I really am not enjoying this. Props to the actors for playing the characters well, but I didn't like it at all. I felt it was very uncomfortable to watch.
You know what other film shares that same premise?
Grease.
Attack of the Clones. Think about it. What kind of material was Anakin wearing?
Yeah.
Who was like his...
Yeah, you're right. And then Padme kind of changes
love for cars.
About herself. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that film was inspired by basically Grease. So
yeah,
it was American Graffiti, but Star Wars.
Classic Lucas.
Yes.
I
was going to say something else and I forgot. Oh yeah, so yeah, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It isn't offensive. It's basically, yeah, you can do it, but you don't have to. That's basically that film. But like for a film I find offensive, I don't know.
I can't think of any that I find offensive. I find it offensive that the deleted scenes for Rise of Skywalker have not been released. I feel that I find that offensive. Like, I want to see them. Come on, Lucasfilm, release them. I'm hoping we get those. I guess what's been populating my mind recently is The Acolyte.
Whatever.
You thought it was
boring at worst.
Yeah, boring at worst. Pretty good at best. I'd say I'd give the show an 8 out of 10 overall. There were things about it that I liked. There wasn't too much that I disliked. I just felt like...
here's my rating. I gave it I fell asleep for half of it out of 10. I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I was just like, I don't care. I just don't care what's happening. It's just like filler lore. And I didn't feel super brought in by the first episode. The second episode was like, okay, this is cool. The third episode, weird. Granted, now that we know the full context with episode 7 is like that makes me appreciate it more. But I feel like the show enjoyed it a lot more as it continued. Not so much as it started though. But granted, it's like those things where now that it's like the puzzle pieces fit now, and now we know why they did what they did, and yeah. Here's how the Disney Plus shows work. You're supposed to watch them all in one sitting. They're like, they were like conceptualized as films first, and then they chop it up. And I don't get.
Yeah.
When you make a streaming service, you're supposed to make episodic, self-contained stories, and then for every week. And that's not that's how a typical TV show should be. But the way Disney
Yeah.
does it, I don't understand their strategy.
Yeah, full seasons used to drop. I remember full seasons of shows used to just drop when they were released. I watched the third season of Cobra Kai in one day, and then I did the same thing. It was that was during the height of the pandemic, and I was going back up to grad school, and it just dropped that day, and like it was in between semesters. I had nothing to do, literally nothing to do. I thought it was going to snow. It didn't, so I didn't have to shovel or do anything like that. I didn't need to do laundry. I literally was just like, this is going to be my lazy day, and that's the first and only time I've ever like binge watched an entire show like as quick as possible.
So I'll say I was watching Breaking Bad, and I don't see the hype for it.
Breaking Bad was
half of the show just felt like filler. Like, have you seen Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I did not watch Better Call Saul though. I watched the first.
Better Call Saul is way better than Breaking Bad for me.
I watched the first season. I just wasn't as gripped. Like Breaking Bad, I felt like people told me, "Oh, it's good. It's gonna get good. It's gonna get good." Like, but I didn't really feel like gripped by the story for a while. Like I remember I was
half of it just like you should just cut the show in half. Like Jesse's relationship with his landlord is like, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
I don't. And then
I might have to rewatch Breaking Bad and then watch Better Call Saul.
And then it just gets into like almost soap opera territory, like cliche tropes, like Walter White's wife commits adultery. Like I don't like adultery stories. I don't like stories.
Neither do I.
Like.
Neither do I.
Main character, like Spider-Man 2 was kind of about that, and I didn't like that.
I didn't like that part of Breaking Bad. That bugged because it's like one of those things. Do you know the concept of fridging?
Oh yeah, of course. That came from a Green Lantern comic.
It came from Green Lantern, yeah. I feel like, as you said, like adultery stories, the love interest. It's like we don't really know what to do with them, so we're gonna give them a complicated story. Yeah. Like they were gonna do that. I read they were gonna do that with The Office. Did you watch The Office?
No, I don't know.
Well, essentially, it's like the John Krasinski's character Jim. Like he's like hopelessly in love with Pam, and they eventually get together. They get married. They have kids, and like so a lot of the plot of the show is like them coming together as well. And they're like the two, I guess, like normal people in an office full of just like crazy people, and supposedly, and I didn't know this until after I finished the show, but it's like they fell off near the end, but there's a point where it's like Jim and Pam are looking like they're having some issues, and then like you kind of get the vibe that like they might split or something. And supposedly John Krasinski said that there was a plot line that was considered for the show where his character Jim would cheat on his wife Pam, and he said I'm not going to shoot that because he thinks it's a complete betrayal of the character. He said it was completely unnecessary. And he said like because he's like that's like with the amount of chaos that happens in that show, like they're like the most normal thing, and like people like them, and it would make people completely just like hate the character for doing that when he's like the one you're rooting for in the beginning, for the really 6 or 7 seasons before that part would have taken place. So it's like, why are you going to throw all that away just for that? I feel like throwing in adultery, it's like if it doesn't, it's like certain type of things like that work. If there's no real reason, if you're just doing it to add complexity,
complexity,
like I don't do something for the sake of complexity. Do something because it actually contributes to the story and causes something like.
I just don't like the subject matter. Like I'm the type of.
I also don't like.
Yeah, I'm just the type of guy who just straight up doesn't like anything like that has a subject matter.
I don't either.
Like The Boys, I'm not watching that.
I am watching The Boys, and I was on the phone with my girlfriend on Thursday, and I'm watching season 4, and I'm like, this show's so depressing. Like it makes me sad to watch that show, and it's really good, but
I
I'm
don't
like,
know what it's about, and
I-
I'm not gonna. I don't want that to influence me in any way.
I enjoy it, but I also am like, I can't stand the show sometimes. It's
Wasn't
just
it
it's
like-
just
Like, isn't it like dark comedy most of the time?
it's dark comedy, but it's essentially like it's like a dark alternate take on superheroes where they're real, like superheroes are real, like modern day New York,
Right.
and they're super corrupt. Everything they do is like
Oh.
they're completely unchecked, and like everything they do is kind of controlled by their PR company. And so like, you know,
Such an original
there's a-
concept, huh?
like so there's like a ton of collateral damage, and no one calls them out on it because they're superheroes, and they're like celebrities, and they don't actually save people. It's all ridiculous, even though they have powers. And so the boys are like the team of Carl Urban's character and his colleagues who are trying to, you know, expose them. And it's pretty much the concept of the show. It's really dark.
So when I
Um,
so when I describe like the concept for like, you know, my stories like
Mhm.
Blue Jacket and Red Coat, people keep comparing it to The Boys, and I don't really want to see it that way. Well, for one thing, there's no comedy in any of it. I'm just like a really cynical person. But
Mhm.
like with Blue Jacket and Red Coat, they're not like actual superheroes. They're like government agents. There's no superpowers. It's just basically real life. You know, it's like Captain
Yeah.
America's. It's like a Captain America story, but it's not. I don't know. It's just really like just edgy
Mhm.
2000s sensibilities for me.
Mhm.
But
I wouldn't call the boys. I wouldn't call the boys comedy.
mm.
I mean, there's definitely some comedic elements,
And
but it's like
just
it's like
gross,
dark.
disturbing.
It's like-
humor, and I don't like that.
It's like dark. It's definitely on the darker side in terms of that. It's like it's not something that I had some work friends who told me that it's one of their favorite shows, and they're all like, oh, like you got to watch it so we can talk about it. And so I'm enjoying it, but it's like if you're not into really dark stories, it's not something I
I also
recommend.
like. I don't like superhero parodies in a way. It's not like a straight up parody, but they have, you know, they're riffing on certain. Superhero archetypes.
Definitely. Like
Homelander, Superman.
oh, yeah, exactly. Like Homelander, Superman, Queen Maeve's Wonder Woman, The Deep is Aquaman. Like it's
like
it's
that.
very much like they do it in a way that works. I mean, because characters do certain things, but like this season they had a Spider-Man equivalent.
Yeah, like
And it's like
look
yeah,
at
it's
my
like
characters. Like look at Blue Jacket. Of course, well, he basically looks like the Lone Ranger, but otherwise he's kind of like Captain America in a sense, but he doesn't. You know, he's not a straight up visual parody of the character. He's just an upstanding person who tries to do right, and
it's like the
yeah, but it doesn't riff
rather
like,
than
on the surface level like superpowers
Right.
or anything like that. I try to make it as original and unique as possible. It just goes straight to like the most important aspect of the character are the morals, and I just want to shave off any like visual resemblance to any character except for like the Lone Ranger, of course. But he's meant to be like a cowboy type character.
Yeah,
So-
and that's what the boys definitely does. I mean, it's like it's as you said, clearly that these characters are supposed to be like the boys' versions of, you know,
Yeah, the Justice
Superman,
League.
Wonder Woman, Justice League. They do a Captain America version in the previous season, and it's like they're
That's an
not
false character.
but they're not at all like the characters. Like
Yeah.
Homelander is definitely not like same powers, yes, but he's definitely not Superman.
Of course, but they're trying to
That's in terms of character,
riff,
yeah.
they riff on the iconography.
Yeah, they riff on they riff on the idea of like the Superman equivalent, and
Actually, yeah, when you
Yeah.
look at my characters, they're just based off like the really old, like timey-wimey archetypes, like cowboy, and then Chanting Terry, that's just like magician.
Mhm.
So I don't want to like riff on actual like you know.
You told me
so
that-
there's this interesting thing about like comic book superheroes being modern day myth. I think Star Wars is better in that regard, but
Mhm.
comic book characters, they're basically gods, and you don't really see Star Wars characters as gods. So that's why I
I
appreciate
agree,
about
yeah.
comic books, like, you know, Greek mythological gods, and that's why I like it on that level, but I don't think they're as like nuanced as Star Wars when it comes to actual symbolism. So
yeah, like I love the. I'm sure you've seen the video of you're talking about like pretty much his roast of the Phantom Menace, and he's talking about like how everything in Star Wars was archetype characters.
Oh yeah,
and like Luke Skywalker is supposed to be the Cinderella. Yoda's his fairy godmother.
I love.
You have all these other characters, and then like Darth Maul being Sisyphus, born to fail. Like everything he does, he looks sick. He does cool things, but he's always going to fail. It's like those are things you have to kind of. And you told me that you've had some characters that you kind of take that inspiration. Like you said, you had someone who was like a Palpatine equivalent. It was like Larissa. I think you said is supposed to be like a Palpatine equivalent, but
no, it's not. Well, yeah, Larissa. That's one of them. I have another character who does actual like cloning of herself to cheat death. Yeah, Larissa. She's more like
just turns to be.
She's more like Hitler. She just no Hitler mixed with she just hates everyone. She's just extremely toxic. That's it.
I'm very intrigued to read the stories. I mean, the snippets you've posted on your Instagram for the last, I don't know, like 2 years at this point. It's because you're writing so many different things. Like I know you talked about like the birth saga, the life saga, the death saga, all that.
Mortality
it's all
saga.
The mortality saga. It's all intertwined, right? Like all the stories.
It really is just like the cycle of life. And I just want to express in my own edgy way, but Star Wars archetypes, that's not something you can get from like DC or Marvel sometimes. Mm-hmm. No, never.
Yeah.
Like almost never. Because I think, I think there's, so this is interesting. Like, how like modern Simpsons is basically trying to, they're written by people who were exposed to the original Simpsons or the Simpsons after that. It's a cycle of, taking inspiration from just like basically, it's a game of telephone basically. That's the best way to describe it. That's the same thing with Marvel and DC comics. Star Wars, it does have that effect with like the Disney stuff. Like even the sequel trilogy, as like, it gets close to Lucas, but it's not Lucas. So that's because with Rise of Skywalker, of course, it has really interesting themes, but at the same time, the best it can do is just culminate the rest of the films into one. And that is an ideal ending for, their standards. But with like, if George Lucas helmed it, he wouldn't do that. He would actually do something more unique. Mm-hmm. But I still like Rise of Skywalker as it is. So I
think they needed to, though. I think like if you're ending a saga, you kind of like, and this is why like when people say, "Oh, Rise relied on nostalgia too much," but you kind of like,
it's perfect in that sense.
You kind of have to tie things up with a nice little bow and make it work out. Like even things like Luke lifting the X-wing, he's truly become the master at that point.
It's a great callback.
Like Rey hearing all the Jedi voices and seeing that's like 1,000 generations live in you. Which just echoes the fact that Obi-Wan says, for 1,000 generations, Jedi regards peace and justice. And it's like all of these things, like they wrap them perfectly. It's like I know to bring it back to where we started. I think we talked about this before we started recording, but like the whole thing with like fan theories, and I feel like I don't like using theories and judging a movie based on that. I judge a movie on what is rather than what I think it should be. I think that I definitely had my theories going into Rise, and then I decided to just park it. I was like, you know what? I don't want to have any bias. Let's just go in and watch the film and just judge it for what it is. And I remember watching this film just being like, this is amazing. I'm really enjoying this. And I think it was the first Star Wars film, like not saying that I didn't like the other films on my first watch, but it was the first film of the new ones where I'm seeing it the entire time. I'm like, this is just great. This is just classic Star Wars at this point. I got no complaints. And that was really like a great moment. That's not something that I really felt like we had a lot of before. And seeing how just things fit, you need to do those things. It's the end of the saga. The end of the Skywalker saga. I know you've said you're not really you're kind of iffy on going past that, but I feel like there's definitely room to go beyond. But in order to do so, they need to wrap up what's already existing. They need to wrap up the story of the Skywalkers, especially Luke, Han, Leia, And you can't have a conclusion without all those callbacks.
The way they
you
did
need
it
to.
is great. Like it could have, turned out terribly, but the way they did it, the way they interweaved it, the way they concluded it. It's not like Ghostbusters, Afterlife, and Frozen Empire. There's just like random callbacks for no reason.
Everything fits for a reason there. Like a lot of things rely on nostalgia, and I feel like you need to do it the right way. Skywalker is a movie that did everything the right way.
I think the way they did it for Rise of Skywalker, it feels almost, I don't want to use this term, but almost fan fiction-y in a way. Like, I love how they did it still, but there's just something a little, on a lower level than Lucas would have done. I do love basically studying and interpreting the film, though. That's the most fun I've ever gotten out of it.
It's just great. Like I can't complain. Like, yeah, I would have definitely made very different films if someone put me in charge, but I can't complain, and it makes me and it's also good that it makes me appreciate those choices more, because things about, as we said before, the things about The Last Jedi that while there were some things I liked, there were some things I was iffy on, but Rise made me enjoy it more. I didn't like that Last Jedi killed off two of its villains, turned a third into comic relief essentially, and then made the fourth one have this will he, won't he redemption arc, which earlier when we said complexity for the sake of complexity isn't necessary. You don't put in complexity for Kylo Ren if you're not going to play it off. Don't just make him have this struggle between should he be good or evil, and then say, because but the biggest thing I don't understand is he was already evil. And it's well, he was evil. If you said after The Force Awakens he's going to be the big bad for the trilogy, I'd believe you. But then The Last Jedi happens, and he doesn't kill Leia, he doesn't kill Rey. Really, his only motive of being evil is going after Luke, and then he loses that at the end. And the fact is, it's you need a villain then, because it's you don't give someone a redemption arc if you're not going to play it off. You don't just make them have conflict just for the sake of it. There needs to be played off, and with that, you need something that then works. How do you then, if you now don't have a villain for the next movie, what do you do?
So
you have to bring back.
You think it just meandered a lot, right?
Yeah.
There's this thing that the only movie critic I listened to. There's this thing he said this about a different film, but for Last Jedi, it's this thing called middle movie syndrome, and it's something that Empire Strikes Back suffers from too.
Definitely,
It just abruptly ends with Darth Vader revealing Luke is his father, and there's not too much contemplation about that. Attack the Clones feels very self-contained though, and that's what I like about Attack of the Clones as a middle movie. There's a lot of story packed in there, but with Last Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, it just seems, I don't know, they do so much and little happens.
Yeah. Last Jedi felt like too much was trying to happen, and I don't dislike the movie at all. I just think I prefer the others more. It's you get those sorts. I can understand why people dislike that movie. I can understand, some of those choices definitely feel a bit jarring, and definitely, as I said, I would have done something different. But I think that you can't get a movie like Rise of Skywalker without that. If Snoke was the big bad in the end of in Episode 9, I don't think it would hit the same way as Palpatine.
No, it would not.
Yeah.
And honestly, just who the hell is Snoke? They didn't even set him. They didn't really set him up in Force Awakens. You know what?
They could have, but they didn't really. So it's not.
I'm grateful for it, because he was just
he's like Dooku.
He's just like a random.
He's honestly like Dooku. He's like Dooku for me.
He is Dooku.
He's there. He's there, and really, he's a plot device to kind of give a rivalry for not necessarily the hero, unless you view Kylo Ren as the hero. Also, but it's
before Rise of Skywalker, at that time, he was the biggest character obstacle for Kylo Ren. And then I think Palpatine kind of just overshadows it. He's hey, I know I like to view Snoke as, of course, he is an extension of Palpatine. So I would I would like to call him Palpatine's shadow in a sense.
Yeah. he was the puppet leader that was serving the purpose. And I think, though, interestingly enough, while I like Force Awakens, I feel like Kylo Ren was the hard sell for me in The Force Awakens on first watch. But then again, you realize he's supposed to be a guy who wants to be Darth Vader. He's not supposed to be a Darth copy. He's the guy who wants to be the Darth Vader copy. And where that comes in, I think Last Jedi kind of took that and made it more by having where it's like they call him out. You're just trying to copy Darth Vader. And that's kind of called out and aggressive. And I think that while I would have not had the guy who could have been killed off halfway through, I think that it really made Kylo Ren's motives a lot more questioned, made him a lot more unique rather than just a Vader copy. It made him a bit more complex than that. And I think it worked out well because then it paved the way well for Rise of Skywalker, because now it's like there's a guy who's willing to betray people to get his own way, but also wants to work with Rey. There's no real focus, but you think that he's not fully committed to evil. He's just trying to find a purpose. And I think that Rise of Skywalker played that out well. They gave Kylo a purpose in the end. Yeah. It was kind of just, I will finish what you started. He kind of does that. Except rather than finish what Vader started, he finishes what Anakin started. And helps defeat the Sith, helps bring Jedi or save people from dying. It just fits. And it's kind of rambling because it's late here, but it's like, I think that Rise of Skywalker did the best that it could have done considering what happened in TFA and TLJ.
Yeah.
And I can't complain about that.
It did perfectly.
Yeah. It was the best possible sequel that we could have gotten to The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm. You know what grinds my gears? No Rise of Skywalker adaptation.
Yeah, like where is that? Someone was saying that to me recently. Like no, yeah, like but didn't they like have it ready to go and they just never released it or something? Come on, put it out. Put out the deleted scenes. Put out the comic.
But yeah, I have the Last Jedi adaptation in individual issues. Mm-hmm. I want to get the actual collection of it, like collected format, but
I was at a comic store at the mall near me and I saw that they had it was literally like the book was really thick and it was the entire Darth Vader comic series.
Oh, like that's an omnibus. That's what we call an omnibus. Yeah.
The prequel, pretty much the one that starts like I forget. I guess it's just called the Darth Vader comics, but like the one that picks off from like where he ends in Revenge of the Sith.
Oh yeah.
So that's to like the whole thing with Darth moment and all that, like that, all of that combination together. Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah,
I want to buy that.
It was. I looked at. I was looking at some of the. I was just like reading it. It was during the holidays. I saw. I was like, this is tremendous. Those comics, I think, were the pieces of those that I read were top notch.
I'm gonna show you like my Star Wars comic collection when I buy everything and set it up. Mm-hmm. Oh boy. So Blue Jack and Red Coat is basically how I would do Rise of Skywalker. No, it's how I would do either A New Hope, Force Awakens, Revenge of the Sith, then Rise of Skywalker. It's basically that. With some Attack of the Clones in there, but
I'm excited to know more about it as it goes on.
It's just like it's just a very grounded, version of Star Wars. I'm just going to talk about it here. Since this is going to be on the Blue Jacket channel, so
yeah. Because I want to know, like, I'm curious about like each of the stories. Like, Agents of Orbit is also the one I feel like I've heard the least about from your posts.
I haven't done anything with it.
Yeah.
But, okay, so basically, it doesn't take place on Earth, because I didn't want to deal with whatever. I didn't want to deal with the politics. I didn't want to deal with the countries. I don't understand Earth itself, so I'm just like, I just made a different planet. Okay, so I just recently created a backstory for the planet. So it's called Mytheldor, like myth, and then Eldor, like elder. So there's that. ChatGPT helped me with that, by the way. But it's just so basically the Journal of Zifsu, which is basically Jedi. That is about the creation of Mytheldor, So it's like almost like how God creates the universe in a way, but this is just two planets that combine into Mytheldor. One is called Eldoria, and the other is called Mytharis. And I'm still developing that story, but they somehow converge. I think my deal was they were basically going to crash into each other, but then basically my female Jesus Christ character uses magic to try to like form them to one planet. And she uses all her power to sacrifice herself in the way, Jesus Christ would save. Yeah.
Is that female Terry?
No. Terry's I will explain Terry, but I think this character I don't have a name for her. I don't want to actually like spoil who she is, but she's just female Jesus Christ. In a way, yeah. But Terry, so I had this thing called a cosmoverse. So that's basically a particular plane of existence, basically. So let's say like our current universe with all the galaxies in it, that's one cosmoverse. And let's say heaven is another cosmoverse and hell is another cosmoverse. Terry is their own cosmoverse. And that's basically the human brain. And you know how like dream logic works? When you dream, everything is just a personification of your own feelings and thoughts. That's Terry. Right. So this female Terry, that's the feminine part of your brain. Male Terry, masculine part of your brain. The fetus butcher, which is like the nihilistic, I hate my species part of your brain. Just like depression, just like you don't like yourself. You don't like you have no like self-esteem. That's that in the character. The idea of Terry is just like, it's about, humanity, it's a rom-com at first, it's about love. And then it turns into like a crime thriller. And they're also magicians. And I use magic as, to convey theme. Magic is basically happiness, or in a more literal sense, it's like creating, children. And, you can see that as magical. Like when I was looking at the Bible, I looked at it and it just said the sacred womb. I'm like, there's something magical about, creating children, right? And that's a magic power you can have. And this is getting like that power gets like the fetus butcher takes that power away from you, and it really leads you into like depression. And just all like expression of, your feelings in that sense. And it's liminal space horror, by the way. So it really is like subjective, very, very subjective. And so yeah, this is a movie I love. You see me post about it. Blonde is about like Marilyn Monroe. People find that movie offensive, but honestly, it's like more of a zeitgeisty thing. It's more like, oh, this film has something to say about abortion, huh? And I'm just like, I don't see that. And even the people behind the film are like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, yeah, the character, like, she gets an abortion and then she tries to make a second child. And the second child basically speaks to her. Okay, the second child, like, so she is like the child is like a telepathic fetus who has the voice, who has like Marilyn Monroe's voice when she was a little girl. So it really is a very Terry thing. But she basically tells Marilyn Monroe not to like abort her. And people just see that as offensive, as anti-abortion. I'm just like, it's about a woman's regret about doing something she didn't want to do in the first place because she was pressured into like the movie business of, she doesn't want to, like, the movie business won't allow her to settle down with children. They want her to continue as, this like model, this, eternal sex figure. And yeah, that's basically what the movie is about.
The what you were telling me about that, about your section, because you have with your the section of your story male Terry, female Terry, and then the fetus killer. And you mentioned
Fetus
earlier,
Butcher.
just like
I renamed it to the Fetus Butcher.
the fetus butcher, the fetus butcher. The vibes I'm getting from that, because I know you talked about. I'm getting like Adam and Eve and the snake.
It is.
That's what I'm
That's
getting
what it is.
from that. Yeah,
that is exactly what it is. Like I was debating whether to actually like depict them naked. I won't. I probably won't. I don't want to do that. I don't like. I still very like conservative with a lot of things, but
give them blue jackets and red coats, or rather, give them a red jacket and a blue coat.
They do wear green. Like if you see my art, they're all green.
Yeah, I see
green
that. Yeah. Those are the green jackets. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will see female Terry like without clothes, but you won't see actual like graphic things. It's like how they censor.
Are you making it a graphic?
Her body and stuff. You
are you making it a graphic novel?
That's
essentially, or
that's what I can realistically do right now. But originally, I just wanted a video game. I still will make a video game. That's just down the road, and everything like that. I wrote it in the context as a video game. I told you it's like liminal space horror. The fetuses, the pixels, they're like square pixels. Like the Magnavox Odyssey, like Pong. That's like the most simplest graphic you can do. Because I didn't want to be graphic. I don't want to show like actual dead fetus. I'll just have like a broken pixel. I'm very conservative with a lot of things. So yeah, it's not the worst. It's not the worst thing you can see, but yeah, basically Chuck Terry. That's Adam and Eve. And but Terry is like God in a sense too, of his own, cosmoverse, his own brain. Yeah. You get to see him. Okay, so basically, he is a magician. He looks like a magician, like like a stage magician who does actual have powers, like Zatanna from DC. He has the same exact type. Yeah, but he doesn't. He doesn't talk backwards or anything. He just has like playing cards that he uses as like shurikens. I took that from Lego Batman, by the way, because Joker had like playing card shurikens. Yeah. There's a lot of influences. I want to name as many influences. We got the flame sword, which is basically, like a lightsaber. He has this flat black circle where he slams it on the ground and he basically jumps in and teleports somewhere else. That came from a Disney MMO called Toontown that I played as a child. And there's a lot of SpongeBob point and click game references in there. Because why not? It's just a lot of things from my childhood shoved in there. Because, it is about like childhood and life. So, yeah. By the way, Terry's birthday is my birthday. So March 9th, 2001, I guess. 2001 in that universe, but yeah, it's March 9th, 2001. That's all I really have to say about Terry. It's just really a lot. Oh yeah, no. You get to see Terry as how like those like a Gandalf wizard. You get to see him look like that, like when he's at his like eldest. And he has like the actual hat with stars on it, like the classic wizard hat with stars, and that does play into like how in Rise of Skywalker where Rey looks into the stars and she hears the Jedi. It's a similar thing. Like all his experience, his past life, the millions of experiences live inside him and is represented with his hat. Yeah. I pulled Rise of Skywalker in there in that way.
Didn't you say there's like the enchanting Terry and the eternal Terry? Like
that's the eternal stories? Terry. Yeah. That's like Terry transcended, like reborn as, And of course, Sith Eternal just influenced me to use that word. The Eternal Terry, I'm still like figuring it out, but yeah.
I like the concepts you've put up. I also like the titles of some of your stories you've put up, like Holiday Kleptomaniacs.
Oh yeah.
And the Nefarious Terrorist Empire.
So yeah, I was channeling Indiana Jones, of course, in like old B movies. The titles, they're goofy and funny. The stories themselves, okay, so I wanted them to be comedies at one point, then serious, then comedy, and serious. So I'm still like up in the air about that. Revenge of the Ancient Undead Witch Empress from Planet Volmar. That's about. Of course, I talked about like living your best life.
I mean, it seems like you got some good messages in there. Like I'm seeing like how you said, because I know you were talking about your like the label imprints. Like some are going to be like more, I guess, happier, family friendly, like holiday tradition stories, as you put it, versus
there's two different versions of like Enchanting Terry Holiday.
Versus like the ones that are like the darker, like
Red
more.
Label. I just named it the Cosmoverse Saga. That's 5 stories: Enchanting Terry, Journal of Zipsu, The Legend of Blue Jacket and Red Coat, Agents of Orbit, and Blue Jacket and Red Coat: The End of Existence. Those 5 stories comprise of the saga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then I want to make ongoing comic book titles. The Enchanting Terry's, Blue Jacket and Red Coat. Wait. There's Knights of the Zipsurian Order. Yeah. You know what that is. You know what that's going to rip off the most.
Mm-hmm.
But Orbit Mission Log and Discount Cake, which is
cool.
Yeah. Blue Jacket and Red Coat: The End of Existence. That's every theme in one story. That's going to be my most ambitious, I'll say.
I'm excited to read them when they are.
But yeah, the idea is graphic novels. I'm still trying to learn to draw. Well, right now, the weather is crippling me. It is so hot. My brain melted.
How hot has it been?
They gave me like a heat warning, like a severity warning. And they were like, this is a threat to your life and your property. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I don't have air conditioning, by the way, so.
what part of if I may ask, or at least how north or south are you?
North.
Relative. North, okay.
I think in the middle. So I'm like next to San Francisco, so.
Okay, yeah. So I know like that area's been getting like a lot of heat advisory and stuff.
I remember like a few years back, there was that forest fire, and everything was hazy and brown.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I want to talk about Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man for some reason. But yeah, Terry. No, actually, Terry. Yeah. So Ultimate Spider-Man is a game I love. I want to do that cell shading graphics of that game for Blue Jacket and Red Coat and other games. Terry is my kind of Spider-Man in terms of a relatable character. And of course with Terry, that's like John Doe, Jane Doe of anything. Yeah. There's a male Terry, there's a female Terry, and it's customizable in that way.
Yeah. It's cool. I'm excited to see how all that goes. I think I know what you're talking about with the art style. Like I think I've seen clips from that game, like how it's drawn, and it looks like someone drew it. Looks like someone drew everything with like pencil. Yeah.
My best friend, he had ideas for like a game engine that would help blend that 2D look with 3D. It was called the Blue Jacket engine, of course. I hope the games will go well. But that's all my ideas I have for right now. With Agents of Orbit, me and another friend are like creating actual like lore for it now, like weaponry, ranks, just getting the organization fleshed out. If I'm going to talk about the villain of the Agents of Orbit, I would be spoiling the Legend of Blue Jacket and Red Coat. So Agents of Orbit is really like a direct sequel to Blue Jacket and Red Coat. The Journal of Zipsu, there's nothing really spoil about that. It's just
said that's more of like this is like the origin of those characters.
The origin of the planet. Of course the character's identity, I don't want to spoil that. Like the female Jesus character, I'm not going to spoil who like their relationship is to what other characters is.
Yeah.
But
cool.
That character is inspired by Ray and Wonder Woman, basically.
Good combination.
Yeah, the combination of those two characters. Oh, and Princess Aurora from Sleeping Beauty. So,
cool.
Female Terry, she's based off Princess Aurora as well. She's based off myself. Male Terry, myself. I do have Blue Jacket. That's Captain America, Superman, just in terms of moral. Luke Skywalker in a sense too. Mm-hmm. Red coat, Anakin Skywalker, and Ben Solo. Ben Solo too. Mm-hmm. Actually, the Fetus Butcher is also Anakin Skywalker, and Ben Solo too, as well.
Makes sense considering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turning evil.
Turning evil. Yeah.
Yeah, I renamed him to the Fetus Butcher because, well, I have the discount killer. Mm-hmm. So
right,
I didn't want another, character killer. And I think with Butcher, like, he's more like visceral in that sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's also like, I can also make like references to Terry's mom being like, cutting meat or something. So, yeah. Agents of Orbit. I can talk about the main protagonist. So the main character is named Truman. It's basically kind of just Captain Kirk. Mm-hmm. I didn't really develop his character too much, but he did originate in Legend of Blue Jacket and Red Coat. There's a character named Serena Savan. She originated. Well, she's both in Blue Jacket and Red Coat and Discount Geek, and then she moved into Orbit. Mm-hmm. I had like a whole crew I want to flesh out. I don't have the names yet. I have these two buffoon characters, Cliff and Dale. Mm-hmm. Basically the C-3PO and R2-D2 of Star Wars, and also based off those two buffoons in Hidden Fortress. Mm-hmm. Then the two in Pirates of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. that trope stereotype.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want like a secondary female, like second in command. I have not created a name for the character yet, but my placeholder name is Josephine, and that's a reference to G.I. Joe. So it might as well be Josephine.
Might as well, yeah.
There's a character who's similar to Deadshot from Suicide Squad, Doug Lillard. He's the brother of Larissa Lillard. He's a sharpshooter, basically. I want to create like an alias for him, like Deadshot. I haven't. I have a Black River. That's what I'm thinking right now, because the name Doug means Black River. So sure, I'll probably call him that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't really. I don't have a big story for Agents of Orbit. It's kind of like it's going to be like Winter Soldier, really. It's just like Orbit gets compromised. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And there's some, of course, like themes about colonizing other planets. Blue Jacket and Red Coat, The End of Existence. Funny enough, like as much as it relies on the previous stories, there's not much to spoil about it. It's just like it's like Endgame. They fight the big bad, like the dark side Thanos character. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of cool, tricks.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to see how it all plays out. Yeah.
Yeah. Also in the Enchanting Terry, have you ever played Spider-Man 2002, the video game?
No.
Oh. So in that game, when you save the game, there's this screen where you're basically in a red room where you're developing photographs. Have you ever developed a photograph in a red room before?
I haven't, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I've done it before. Oh no, I'm losing my voice.
That's cool.
Basically, in Enchanting Terry, when you save the game, you take a photograph of your saved state. And on Polaroid camera and processes. So it's almost the same thing in the Spider-Man 2002 game. But in Enchanting Terry, you use it as like a time traveling tool as well. And that does come into play in End of Existence. And that's going to be really fun.
Cool.
But yeah, outside of that, I don't really like to write that much. That's probably like, of course, I'm doing the end all be all of storytelling. I'm talking about the cycle of life, pulling all the religious elements in there. But if I were hypothetically to write anything outside of that, that isn't fan fiction, because I wanted to do like Ninja Turtles, Rise of Skywalker, basically. If I were to hypothetically write anything outside of any of that, and even outside of like just different Discount Geek stories, I would write. I would write nothing else. That's it. I would give regular updates on this. I know I spoke about a lot of things that like if anyone's watching this, they're just gonna be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" But yeah.
I mean, I've been following I'm sure that anyone who's seen this, I'm sure the portion of them have been following your pages and seeing
no one
stuff
cares.
you're updating.
No one cares except
who knows? I think it's cool.
Yeah,
I've been following for I guess a little over a year now, but it is late over here, so I might start heading out over here. But thank you for having me on here, chatting about Star Wars. Your stories and all sorts of things. So yeah, lots of good stuff.
All right.
All
Thanks
right.
for coming on. My voice is very given out, so
Me as well.
yeah.